Right now, data center controversy. Republican State Representative Shelley Luther, who lives in a rural part of North Texas, tells us she agrees with Governor Abbott's idea that AI data centers should be prohibited in rural Texas neighborhoods. But Republican Texas Railroad Commissioner Wayne Christian tells us he disagrees, saying rural Texas is dying. Debating affordability, Democratic Senate candidate James Talarico says he can win by focusing on costs and affordability. But Republican Ken Paxton is criticizing Talarico's record. And illegal immigration impact. A white paper from the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas says housing and rental costs went up in part because of the 7 million people who entered the U.S. illegally during the Biden administration. Good Sunday morning to you. I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas starts now. Hello and welcome to Eye on Politics. Hope your weekend is going great. We're going to begin with the controversy over data centers in Texas. Opposition seems to be growing, particularly against data centers that will be built to support the increasing demand for AI. We showed you last week that Governor Greg Abbott said he wants to prohibit AI data centers in rural Texas neighborhoods. This week, we hear from two Republicans, State Representative Shelley Luther, who lives near Sherman and who agrees with the governor, and Texas Railroad Commissioner Wayne Christian, who helps regulate the state's oil and gas industry, who disagrees with the governor. We begin with Representative Luther, who we spoke with at her home overlooking the Texas countryside.
I think it's huge for the governor to come out and say that we need to protect really the Republicans that live in these rural areas are his voters, and we're pretty easygoing. We don't ask for much, but when people try to come into our property rights, it's frustrating.
The people who live out here, obviously mostly conservatives, Republicans, they're not happy with this, right?
Well, it's scary because there's a lot of people that don't understand data centers, and it kind of reminds me of like the COVID era. When COVID came out, everybody was freaked out about everything until we learned exactly what it was. I think there needs to be a lot of education and information about what these data centers do, where they need to go, how much water they use, the electricity. But honestly, a huge eyesore for those of us that live in this rural area because of the beauty. Green land, rolling hills. I don't think that we should tear that up for data centers. Steaks don't come from H-E-B is like what I like to say. They've got to come from somewhere. In rural Texas, you've got to preserve this land and not put a big industrial footprint on it. The Texas legislature is who needs to step in, make the laws. I think Governor Abbott's letter to the PUC chairman was a big move to say, hey, let's take a pause. And he knows that they shouldn't just come in and take our water, electricity, and we're just ruined.
How big are the political stakes if the governor didn't do this?
Well, I think that Governor Abbott is very good at reading and polling what's going on in Texas, and he wants to do what conservatives want him to do. And so he wouldn't have put that statement out if he wasn't feeling the pressure, I don't think.
For people such as yourself who live in unincorporated counties and unincorporated areas of counties, you were telling me before there is no zoning, and so it is the wild, wild west, as you said.
Well, what's funny is that's the reason why we moved out here, because you could hear, I mean, the fireworks were crazy. We were on our, looking out on our back porch, and we love that you can do whatever you want. We have kangaroos. Maybe the city would tell me I couldn't have kangaroos on our farm, And so the reason why we moved out here is to have complete liberty of whatever we wanted to do, no HOAs or anything crazy like that. But I think us having that in Texas and Texas being known for those private property rights, I think the rest of the developers, some developers are taking complete advantage of that. Hey, let's go to Texas because they can't tell us what to do. One of my colleagues said on a video that I watched yesterday, like, if you own your land, we want you to do in the unincorporated areas, it's your land. If you want to put a giant data center on it, that's your business because you have private property rights. But if your data center causes noise, air pollution, contamination, takes up all the water, then you're infringing on everybody else's private property rights. So once they roll over into other people's property rights, then that's a problem. So I think the biggest thing that we need to do is put it in the hands of local elected officials that people can vote out if they're not doing what they want. So probably the commissioner's court, giving the county the ability not. The reason why we have these private property rights is because we don't want the counties telling us what to do. So liberty, right? But now we're like, okay, wait, we need to scale that back just a little bit and give them a little bit of authority, some sort of zoning, or saying, not that you can't do that here, but if you do that here, these are the things that you need to follow.
Now we hear from Railroad Commissioner Wayne Christian, who told me he disagrees with the governor's idea of prohibiting AI data centers in rural Texas.
No, I definitely do not. Rural Texas is dying. We right now understand in the United States of America, rural America is decaying, going away. We in Texas, like I say, every little town in my county is half the town. When Walmart came in back in the 1980s, early 80s, 70s, when Walmart came in, great business, great friends, but they shut down businesses all over these rural counties in America. Walmartization of rural Texas destroyed the communities. Now, it's free market competition. I'm not knocking Walmart, they're good neighbors, but my dad's business closed, a little service station, because he couldn't sell tires and batteries for anywhere close to what this big national corporation could do. And this happened to businesses all over every little town. Now, the county seats, the center of the county, many times benefited where Walmart was located, but it still destroyed the individual businesses. So entrepreneurs left rural Texas. The largest amount of dollars that are dedicated and raised in those rural communities right now are scholarship funds for their high school seniors. And it's dollars that are raised that are sent out of the county to schools to train up their children to never come back for jobs that don't exist in those rural areas. And I believe we need a state commission to review this rural Texas dilemma and come up with plans. And these billions of dollars from data centers could be one answer to rebuilding that decay of rural Texas.
So let me ask you, because people in rural areas have really opposed, and when I say people in rural areas, these include conservative Republicans who don't want these AI data centers. And, you know, among their concerns are light pollution, noise pollution coming from the centers, plus the concerns about water usage, which I read a report recently that said is much higher than what is being reported. And then electricity usage, you know, the impact on the grid. Now, I realize some of these data centers are building their own natural gas fired power plants right near on their property so that they have access to the power that they need, and then agree to have their to give back to the grid in cases of a statewide emergency. But what do you say to those folks who say, you know, this is why they're concerned?
If it were those problems that you've mentioned, I'd be opposed to them too. That's why I say, just like the answer to the power that you've just given, use Texas natural gas. Texans benefit from the production of the gas, the royalties from the gas, and all of our natural resource God has given us. And let's use that natural gas and require any data center to provide their own electricity to the point that it's not available on the local grid. And in every situation where you have additional power added to the grid, the availability goes up and the prices go down to the community. When there's more, it's supply and demand. So you've just answered that problem with what you've suggested. Water, how about this one? Less than 3 weeks ago, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality finally declared that we could use disposal water. That's been a big problem. This wastewater from oil and gas that we've been injecting in the ground, and in places like Midland have said they've had earthquakes that they many times blame on this pressurized wastewater. All over East Texas, we filled up from Louisiana bringing wastewater over. We can now, as of 3 weeks ago, use that water for agricultural purposes, for other purposes as cleared by TCEQ. How about using the water that we have in the ground that's a problem for the data centers and require these billion-dollar corporations to pay the fee to pipe it and use it? That's an answer. I'm not saying that's the answer, but I'm saying that's how we Texans need to approach this. Not just say, oh, no, don't do it here.
Coming up later, a new white paper from the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas reports on the impact of illegal immigration during the Biden administration on the price of homes and rent. But next, Democratic Senate candidate James Talarico sounds off on affordability and the Republicans' midterm national convention in Dallas when Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Now to the U.S. Senate race in Texas, which we've told you is a virtual dead heat between Democratic State Representative James Talarico and Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton. Talarico campaigned in Dallas early last week and said his continued focus on costs and affordability will help him win in November. But Paxton's campaign criticized Talarico's record. After touring a West Dallas food bank last Monday, Democratic Senate candidate James Talarico told reporters about what he described as a five-alarm fire.
We talked to the volunteers here at the food pantry. They said that they are seeing more of their neighbors showing up here than during the pandemic.
Hey, Fort Worth!
As he campaigns against Republican Ken Paxton for the U.S. Senate seat, Talarico blamed GOP leaders on Capitol Hill who passed their working families tax cuts. The bill doesn't tax overtime pay or tips and made permanent all the income tax cuts from President Trump's first term instead of allowing them to expire and go back up. The legislation, though, also cut federal food assistance programs and reduced the growth in Medicaid spending.
It is a prime example of this corrupt system that we're running against.
To get into that position where you worry about policy, you got to win. And the polls show you're in a dead heat. How are you going to win this?
And so how we win is focusing on the things that are actually impacting Texans. And I think if we do that, and if we bring people together around some common sense solutions to lower our costs, to raise our pay, to get this economy back on track, I think we're going to be successful in November.
Talarico wants to create a federal public health insurance option that will compete with private insurance, raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour, and increase taxes on the wealthy and corporations.
It is so good to be here.
But the Paxton campaign blasted Talarico for opposing the Republicans' tax bill last year and for his record in the Texas House of Representatives, where he voted against constitutional amendments that voters approved to ban a state income tax, a wealth tax, and death taxes. In a statement, the campaign said, quote, Talarico's claiming to care about affordability is laughable. Republican State Representative Matt Shaheen said Paxton has a better answer on affordability than Talarico.
James Talarico actually voted against a constitutional amendment to forbid an income tax. He wants it to be easier for local governments to increase people's property taxes. He's on the wrong side of so many of these economic issues, of job issues. And again, Ken Paxton's going to excel here.
So yeah, I'm going to continue to oppose tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. And I'm going to keep fighting to make sure that we lower costs and raise pay for working people across the state.
In campaign finance reports released last week, Talarico said he raised more than $30 million in the second quarter, while Paxton said he raised more than $9 million. Governor Abbott called for the state's Health and Human Services Commission to immediately investigate reports that a South Texas hospital was advertising birth packages in South Texas in foreign countries. It comes after the Supreme Court's recent decision upholding birthright citizenship. Sarah Jenkins now with the brief.
Governor Greg Abbott has instructed the Texas Health and Human Services Commission to investigate so-called birth tourism packages. The governor says Mission Regional Medical Center in the Rio Grande Valley advertised the service inviting foreign travelers to give birth in Texas in order to get U.S. citizenship for their children. The hospital denies supporting any unlawful activity, saying, quote, the marketing materials regarding maternity services are no longer in use due to any unintended misunderstanding. Governor Abbott says American citizenship is not for sale and wants the state to review the allegations. The hospital also said in part, we do not support or facilitate any unlawful activity, and we intend to work cooperatively and transparently with local and state officials. The investigation comes as the debate over birthright citizenship continues nationwide. The Supreme Court recently upheld the 14th Amendment that people born in the U.S. are citizens. For The Brief, I'm Sarah Jenkins.
Coming up next, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne weighs in on a new report from the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas about the impacts illegal immigration during the Biden administration had on home and rent prices. When Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas comes right back. A white paper by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas concludes the record number of illegal immigrants during the Biden administration had a big impact on housing prices, rents, and employment growth. The Federal Reserve Bank says their working papers are preliminary drafts and that the views expressed are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas or the Federal Reserve System. This working paper was released in March and called Impacts of Unauthorized Immigration on U.S. Labor and Housing Markets. The report says the large increase in unauthorized immigration into the U.S. from early 2021 to early 2024 added roughly 7 million people to the U.S. population, nearly double that of legal immigration. The report said the illegal immigration is responsible for roughly 30% of total employment growth over March 2021 to March 2024. It also finds about 30% of the total growth in house prices are to blame on the large increases in illegal immigration. And that same problem is responsible for 20% of the total growth in rents. Republican Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne of Irving posted the report on her X account, and we spoke with her about this.
We've actually been saying this for a number of months now. I don't think people sometimes understand the ramifications of having so many folks enter your country illegally in such a short period of time and the financial disaster that it causes. And I want to make sure that people heard those numbers. It caused an increase in housing by 30%. It caused an increase in rental rates by 20%, which, when President Trump was running for this position for a second time, he was very clear to say, we have got to focus on deportations. There's a reason why. Look at what happened to the housing market. And as a direct result, by the way, what you're seeing now is prices coming down. You've had over 3.5 million people either self-deport or have been deported, through this administration, and it's having an immediate reaction in the market on housing. We have to continue that.
What's Congress doing about it?
When we look at our Working Families Tax Cut bill, it actually put provisions in there to be able to support Immigrations and Customs Enforcement and CBP, Customs and Border Protection work, to make sure that they were going after folks that were in our country illegally and committing crimes. And I think that is something that people voted for, and that's what we're taking seriously.
You recently wrote a letter, and I think there were other members of Congress who signed it, urging the Trump administration, the Vice President, and the Secretary of State to investigate allegations of H-1B visa fraud. Where does that stand?
The administration is absolutely taking it seriously, but one of the things I think drew my attention to was when you looked at the fraud numbers and the HB1 numbers that were happening, the HB1 visa numbers that were happening in North Texas, specifically in Irving, Texas. They're taking the letter serious, and that letter was signed by Congressman Pat Fallon, Congressman Ronnie Jackson, Congressman Brandon Gill, all from North Texas, urging, because we're seeing it in our own backyards, urging the administration to not only look at what the fraud numbers are, but also work with the agencies to figure out what we need to do in Congress to be able to fix it. And so we are still working with that. I think we're taking a much more aggressive, much more engaging approach with the administration to prevent that from happening. But look, we had jobs that were being created for these phantom visa holders that were affecting Americans being able to get jobs, that were affecting Americans being able to get paid, what those job numbers were going for, because all of a sudden you had folks who were coming here from other countries that were taking advantage of this program, getting paid much less than American workers for doing the same thing, which was driving down wage numbers.
Let's talk about the job fair that you hold annually, again in early August.
August 6th this year. August 6th from 11 to 3 at Globe Life Field. But we have over 550 businesses right now that have 550 businesses right now that have already shown an interest, representing well over 30,000 job opportunities. In previous years, about 30% of those jobs have been $100,000 and above jobs. So this is not your typical job fair. This now represents the largest job fair in the country. And it's going to be August 6th again, from 11 to 3 over at Globe Life Field. And for those people who want to find out what industries, it basically covers the gamut of industries, healthcare, law enforcement, academics, technology. Really, there's an infinite number of industries, from the starter jobs to CEO and C-suite level positions. It doesn't cost anybody anything to come. We're covering all the costs for the job fair. All the businesses participate, at no cost.
If you're interested in the job fair, you can check it out at myntxjobs.com. It will be held at Globe Life Field on Thursday, August 6th, from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. And remember, you can watch all our full interviews on our CBS Texas YouTube page. And while you're there, check out the Eye on Politics playlist and hit the subscribe button to get all the updates. And that's all for Eye on Politics this week. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. Thanks very much for watching, and from all of us here, have a great week, and I'll see you next Sunday.